Yep.
You're good.
Give me a nod when
Yeah,
you're
I'm
ready.
like fourth.
Shooter's ready. Stand by.
Hey everybody, this is Frank Gal. I'm joined today by Matt Gunlock and Chris Scott. We're sitting inside Alex Go King's living room. This is a bit of a different episode today. We are going to be doing a retrospective on Matt's 20-year career in the Marine Corps. Earlier today, we attended his retirement ceremony. It was a beautiful ceremony, big showing. I was at the Marine Corps Museum. And that ceremony does a lot to encapsulate 20 years of service. However, we did want to do a deep dive into some of the lessons that Matt has learned over his years of service. So this episode will kind of serve as a capstone of that. So I'll start it off, and myself and Chris are going to be asking the questions back and forth. Matt, could you give some advice to individuals at these particular points in the Marine Corps career? A newly promoted NCO, a newly promoted staff NCO, and a fresh lieutenant to the fleet.
All right, so for the newly promoted NCOs, don't change who you are just because you pick up rank. Whenever, think back to when you were a junior Marine, whether it was private, PFC, Lance, Corporal, and look at how your NCOs treated you. There's the shitbag NCOs, and then there's really good NCOs. Kind of look at it in terms of who do you want to emulate the most, and set that as an example. Be that example. Emulate what they emulated for you. You don't have to change who you are. Whenever I got promoted to corporal, it was Iraq 2005, and my squad leader at the time, not that he was a bad guy, but he's like, "Oh, you're a corporal now. You need to be a bulldog. You have to change your perspective." I tried it. It wasn't me. I felt like I was making an ass out of myself more than anything else, and then I kind of just came into my own and figured out what worked for me. For the newly promoted staff NCO, you made it in a sense, but it's not time to coast. It's time to put in that work. Typically, I'm an infantry guy, as everybody knows. That's that first chance that you have into really developing that officer that's going to be assigned to you. You have, that's an honor. In terms of people on the outside, they don't have the opportunity to develop anybody. You are in a unique position to where you can bring somebody that's brand new into your platoon, and you can mold him into the into the leader that you want to have lead you. And then take care of your Marines. Just because you pick up, staff sergeant, it doesn't mean that anything changes. You still have all the qualities that it took to get you there. So you need to build upon those qualities. Look at the lessons learned. What really helped me is I would look at the other staff NCOs, and even growing up throughout my entire career in the Marine Corps, it was kind of, I pick and chose what I liked, the qualities I liked from each and every one of them. And that's how I developed as a leader. I had some leaders that were micromanagers, and let's be real, everybody hates a micromanager. Whenever I was a platoon sergeant, I told my squad leaders, "Hey, this is my intent. This is what has to get accomplished. We have to do this today." But I wouldn't tell them how to do that. And by not telling them how to do that, it allowed them to grow and allowed them to figure things out for themselves. And that's what being a newly promoted staff NCO is all about. It's about figuring out what works for you. For that lieutenant, you're young, you're new. You should be attached at the hip with your platoon sergeant. You should listen to everything that they have to say. I'm not saying every staff NCO is perfect. There's plenty of shitbag staff NCOs out there. But if you have good judgment of character, you're not going to be the only officer there, and that's not going to be the only staff NCO in your company. But you can generally look and see who's squared away and who's not, who can do the job and who just sucks at it, and just kind of, find that balance of what's going to work for you. You really gotta, you really have to, that person in the Marine Corps, it's really special thing, because you have, as a young lieutenant, you have somebody that's sole purpose in life is to just develop you as a person, and take advantage of that, because you may not have that. If you get out, you're not going to have somebody there to do that. So take that opportunity now to learn to be developed.
Yeah, I think something important you mentioned during that was for your new NCOs, not to change who you are fundamentally, to try new things. And you said that a certain style of leadership didn't work for you, and so you reverted to something else. The reason I asked this question was it's a pivotal moment in a lot of careers. You're stepping into new responsibilities, and it's okay to experiment with different things, and it's better to experiment and fail a little bit, and there's a little bit of failure associated with each of these ranks before cementing the kind of leader that you're going to end up being and sticking something that perhaps doesn't work in the long term. So thanks for that answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you kind of obviously talked about some of the qualities that a staff NCO should have or a lieutenant should have. But what are some of the characteristics of the best officer staff NCO working relationship they've had during your time in the Marine Corps?
All right, so I'll start out with saying, quite honestly, my favorite rank in the Marine Corps was being a staff sergeant. To me, being a platoon sergeant in the infantry meant everything. And the reason that is it's the first time you can take a platoon of Marines and you can mold every single one of those Marines how you want them to be molded. Whenever I was a platoon sergeant with 1st Battalion 8th Marines, I had my platoon commander was Lieutenant White. And we essentially made every decision together. If we disagreed with something, nobody knew about those disagreements. When we presented something, whenever we told Marines we need to get this done, it wasn't, hey, the lieutenant said we have to get this done, so get it done. It was like, hey, we need to get this done now. It was a true relationship where there wasn't a he said, she said, we have to do this. It was, go do this now. We decided this. Even if I disagreed with something, but, he still told me, hey, we got to do it. It was we, not I, not he, we. And you really got to look at it in those terms. And we always weighed pros and cons. And, we were a united front. We were capable of criticizing each other and really holding each other accountable without offending each other. In the mornings, we would PT together. We'd let our squads do their own thing. And every Friday, we would tag along with the squad or whole platoon PT. And ultimately, at the end of the day, our goal wasn't just to make capable warfighters. Our goal was to return capable young men back to society if they chose to get out. Give a better product than what you received. That was that was our sole purpose. Like, make upstanding citizens of the United States. Make patriotic Americans. Make people who love this country and, want to serve and were honored to serve. That was our goal. Quite honestly, the other staff and NCO officer pair that was a pleasure was with you, sir. Captain Scott. You, Raider, and I worked together on everything, and we wanted to create a program in the Marine Corps that would truly make a difference. You spent and I spent a lot of time on the road and discussed all sorts of things. We could have disagreements and still carry on as if nothing happened. We would bounce things off each other all the time, even at night. Hey, I got this idea. Yeah, I know I can get annoying at times, but it's like I just had to get it out. And I could honestly say I was overly persistent at times, and you'd say no. Then I'd come back and you'd still say no. Then, because who I am, I would do it again, but not once did you hold it against me. And usually, whenever I did it, it's like, I'll bring out an example. I wanted to create the USPSA team, but in your mind, you didn't think that at first it would never get approved. Mm-hmm. And I just proposed the idea. I didn't come up to you with any kind of hard data, facts, budget, nothing. But then I was like, and I kept bothering you. But then I came at you with, I was like, if we do this, this is how much it saves. This is what we can accomplish. This is how we can make it work. And we're like, let's present it to Major O'Driscoll. And we presented it as a, officer, staff, and CO together. And he was like, fuck yeah, let's do it. Mm-hmm. And, to me, that's a beautiful thing, even though you would say no and I would keep coming, at the end of the day, we were able to achieve something.
Well, there were plenty of times, too, where you just exercised very good initiative without asking.
That too.
That'd work out also.
Yeah. Operating within the gray.
Nice. What are some particular duty stations, deployments, and we already talked about relationships, but we're going to talk about some more that you consider pivotal to who you are today.
All right. Quite honestly, the first one, it's probably had the most impact on my life. Iraq 2005. It was my baptism in the combat, I guess I'll call it. And there are so many things that just stick out of my mind to this day, from losing Larry Philippon to seeing other friends wounded, to clearing house to house for weeks on end, city after city. It was that deployment. I still think of it every day. And Larry's parents are like family to me. They took the entire platoon and we're all family. And that's something special. They could have held grudges against, but they're quite honestly the most patriotic and wonderful Americans I've ever met. They are the strongest family I have ever met. And that deployment, it sucked in so many ways, but I miss it in so many ways, because you'll never be as close to anybody as you are out there. And there are times I really miss that aspect. So another place that really made an impact on me was Bahrain. It wasn't a deployment. It was more like being stationed. I was stationed over there at the MEB headquarters. It was my first taste of being in a command with senior leadership. And by senior leadership, I'm talking, there was, officers, or let me put it like this. Staff NCOs and NCOs were comparable to, Lance Corporals and Sergeants. Like, a staff sergeant is pretty much like a Lance Corporal or a sergeant. I mean, they don't treat us like that, but, there's really no junior Marines. It's a top-heavy command. You have nothing but, majors, lieutenant colonels, and you have a commanding general. So I was maybe one of 10 infantry guys out there, but it gave me an opportunity to really see the big picture, see the strategic level, see the strategic go into the operational and carry on into the tactical level. It was the first opportunity I really had to see how an operational command like that worked. I'd say I networked relentlessly, as Captain Scott knows me for, and I served as an advisor with the Joint Special Operations Task Force Arabian Peninsula. I served as an LNO liaison officer to the Combined Joint Task Force Horn of Africa in Djibouti, Africa. And I had to learn how to build relationships in order to get stuff done with nothing to offer in return, because that's what the mission demanded it of me. When I was in Djibouti, I had nothing to give. I'm just there as a person who is passing information from my command to CJTF HOA. That's all I was there for. But there are times I had to get stuff done. What could I do for them? Nothing. But I had to get it done. So I had to really work, learn how to build relationships, and be genuine about it, in order to accomplish those goals. Because at the end of the day, my command doesn't want to hear that I didn't get the job done. They want to hear that, hey, I got that shit done. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and that's what you just talked about. That's actually a big part of staff officership, right? You're responsible for your very specific component of a command, but you're still responsible to your commander for mission accomplishment. So I learned a lot of those lessons being the lone communications officer. I actually thought of another question. So during your retirement ceremony today, you had an address from George Bush as part of one of the letters that was written out.
Yep.
And it occurs to me, there's a lot of ways to slice up 20 years, right? The number of presidents that you've served under, how technology has changed, current events, a lot of different things. What are some ways that the Marine Corps has changed since you first joined? I know that's a loaded question, but we could always come back to it.
So this is what I'm going to say about that. The Marine Corps hasn't changed. It truly hasn't. Just my scope and my view has changed. Marines are still, junior Marines are going to still do the same stupid shit I used to do when I was a young Marine. That's not going to change. The NCOs and the staff NCOs are still going to do the same things, take care of Marines. Nothing changes. Everybody thinks just because, time has gone on, that's not my Marine Corps. This isn't how it was when I was in the Marine Corps. It's the same damn Marine Corps. Nothing has changed. The only thing that's changed is you picked up rank and you're seeing things through a different lens.
Or you're holding on to what used to be and you refuse to change with the times.
Correct.
Rose-colored glasses too, looking at the past.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're not going to talk about that. But, Chris, over to you.
Okay, what do you consider the most difficult or trying point of your career, and how did you overcome it? How did it change you as a Marine, a leader, and a person? And what advice would you give to somebody going through a similar situation?
All right. I'm just going to come out with it. The past 2 years have been very trying for me. I had a very, I don't want to say a toxic relationship with my senior leader. But what I did to get through it was remain professional at all times. And there are times I really screwed that up too. I should have made corrections when I didn't. I'm guilty of that.
We were both in that together, though, and
we were.
Yeah.
But and during the time we were like, we're just gonna let this one go, and that way that person sees exactly what happens, because at that moment in time, we were kind of like, he needs to see how everybody feels about him. Is that the right approach? Yes and no. But, it was a very trying time for me. I would say, even the past 4 months, there were emotional roller coasters going on. But, one of the things that really helped is I have a mentor, Sergeant Major Chris Singley, and he said something that really resonated with me. And he's like, sometimes you're just gonna have bosses that you don't get along with, and they're not gonna like you, but you owe it to yourself and to those Marines to continue doing your job professionally without a bias. And so when he told me that, I was like, okay, I'm still gonna try and get all this stuff accomplished. I'm still gonna have my opinions about what's going on, but at the end of the day, I got to take care of the Marines. And during this situation, that's where I put my main focus. I was like, well, I may not like him, and we may not agree on a lot of things, but there's one thing I can do that's gonna, that is gonna happen, and it's I'm gonna shield these Marines, and I'm going to take care of them. And that's where the main focus for me was the Marines.
Yeah, I think you and I had similar realizations. I worked for a company commander as a young lieutenant, and if you had asked me when I was working for that individual whether or not I planned on accepting career designation, I would have straight up said no. So, just a little bit of a personal question, but was it during that time that you decided that 20 years was it for you?
It was, actually.
Okay, and I think that's one of the side effects of working for someone like that. I still think, as unfortunate as it is, there is a lot to be learned from those kinds of individuals in terms of what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
I had the realization that, it took me a while. I was literally in the desert in Yuma watching my staff bicker with each other when I realized, like, I'm not doing my job. I need to stand as a screen between this individual and my staff. If I'm not there, then I'm just letting it affect them and their ability to do their jobs. Actually, leads me to my next question. So, anybody that goes 20 years in the Marine Corps, I've never trusted individuals to tell me they're going to do 20 right off the bat, because I don't think that's a feasible mindset. 20 years is a long time.
I almost got out at 15 years.
Yeah, if you ask me right now, like, it's something I'm going to have to deal with within the next 5 years. I don't time, even if I'm on the back end of 20 years, I still refuse to, like, tether myself to it just because of benefits or whatever. But you did leave the Marine Corps at one point in your career. What were the reasons behind you leaving at that point in your life, and what called you back in?
All right, so I left the Marine Corps in June of 2006. And whenever I'll even go further back. So, I came in the Marine Corps 4 days after I graduated high school. I have no life experience. The Marine Corps is the only thing I really knew other than high school up to that point. So I wanted to see kind of what freedom was like, see what life was like on the outside. I came back in January of 2007, so there really wasn't much time that I was out. Even at the time I knew that there was going to be a chance that I'd come back in, so I joined the reserve unit. And after having, I guess you could say, my short fill of freedom, I realized that it was time to make my way back in. Another aspect of why I came back in is I had guys that I'd served with on my previous deployment to Iraq that were back in Iraq, and they were not having a good time. They had lost a lot of good Marines during that deployment, and what got me is I felt like I failed them. I felt like I abandoned them. I felt like it was my fault. And it wasn't. War is war. But I truly missed the connection that I had with those Marines, and I wanted to get back to something like that. And so, that's why I came back in. I loved the Marines. I loved the mission, and I wanted to get back to it.
Follow-up question. Speaking as a former dirty reservist, did joining the reserves and seeing how nasty everyone was there inspire your return to active duty?
You're talking to a current dirty reservist
I'm-
officer right now.
So this entire podcast is tainted.
So, honestly, I never did a drill weekend with them in my life. I joined an artillery battery out of Richmond, Virginia. I was living in Lynchburg, Virginia. I did the whole EAD recruiter thing. So I was a reservist that was kind of an active reservist at the time, but for a short period of time. And I was working out of the recruiting station. The only reason why I learned about that is the station chief, Staff Sergeant Arnold at the time. He tried convincing me to go that route. Went as far as the sergeant major, getting me a school seat at recruiting school. And I was like, oh, this would be cool. And then I went out there, on the streets, as it's basically recruiter's assistance up until you go to the school. But I was like, this shit fucking sucks, and I was like, I want nothing to do with this. And I was like, I need to get back to active duty. So I never really had any time in the reserves. If you really think about it, I never drilled with them. I did I was on recruiting duty basically, and I hated life.
Fair enough. Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories about recruiting, and there's a lot of tough billets in the Marine Corps. Most of the time, guys will say, I did it, I survived it, I'm glad I did it, it made me stronger. No one's ever said that to me about recruiting. So, to any of you who are thinking of going recruiting, just take that as a warning sign.
Did that help you develop some of your ability to build relationships, or is that something that you've always had, or is it something you developed?
I'll be honest with you, that it didn't help me build relationships. Honestly, I didn't really learn how to build relationships until I read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. I can make friends, all that kind of stuff. I used to be a really big introvert, to be honest with you. I didn't want to have relationships. I just, I wanted to be with my family. Making friends wasn't a priority. And part of the reason why, and I think it was a failure on my part in this sense, is I had lost friends in Iraq. Friends got wounded. I didn't want to have any close connections with anybody, so I didn't want to have really any friends. And I think that was the wrong choice. At the time, that was my mindset. And then when I was a staff sergeant, I read the book Outliers. And essentially the book is, how successful people surround themselves with other successful people. And number one thing that they do is, they network. And when they network, they are genuine about networking. They will send letters to each other, thank you cards. They will do acts of appreciation. And that's, when I read that book, Blink was another really good one. Let's just be really honest. Malcolm Gladwell is a phenomenal author and brings in some really good insight. And those books really developed me and really called to me. And that's kind of how I started developing relationships. And then it continued whenever I was in Bahrain. And as a platoon sergeant, going to Israel, going to Bulgaria, going to, being in Romania, I still talk to, the foreign nationals that I met over there. I still keep in contact with some of them, and they're great people. It really sucked whenever I had to do my, investigation for my security clearance again. But, they're good people. Went out to Bahrain and, really networked on the military side. And I'll bring an example of how it really helped the team on the military side. Lance Corporal Cardenas. He was stationed over in Okinawa. Marine Corps Championships came in. He was a phenomenal shooter. We wanted to bring him as a summer shooter, and we were having a hard time getting in contact with his command. It was a 96. I think that's what it was, or the weekend had already started, so nobody was going to be answering their emails. And I was like, hey, Cardenas, who's your CO? Or I was like, what unit are you with? He's like 7th Com. I was like, oh, I know your CO, Lieutenant Colonel Ladd. I was like, give me a second. I called Lieutenant Colonel Ladd on FaceTime Messenger. I was just like, hey man, hey sir. I was like, hey, I have Lance Corporal Cardenas here. He's a phenomenal shooter. I want to keep him for the summer. Typically I would be doing this over email and everything, but I understand it's the weekend already over there in Okinawa. Can I just get a verbal from you that he can stay over the summer? He's like, absolutely. Like, keep him. And we got to keep him. It's being genuine.
Interesting. Yeah, it's definitely something you become very good at, and it does feel genuine from you, and I think a lot of people feel very important to you, which we saw today also. So our next question here, what are some important lessons you've learned about taking care of your Marines in regards to awards, work-life balance, professional development? What do you do when you feel like the level of attention you give to taking care of others isn't necessarily reciprocated for yourself?
So I'm going to have to look at this sheet. Which question is it on here?
It's, that one.
Okay. Taking care of Marines isn't just about, it's not about giving them exactly what they want. It's about giving them the training that they need. I'll kind of go into an example. When I was in 1-8, we were on ship for 3 or 4 days, something like that. Got off ship, climate controlled, AC, all that kind of stuff. Marines getting soft, if you want to call it. Like, we were just living comfortably on the ship. We took helos off and landed, into an LZ, in North Carolina, and it's summertime. It's fucking hot. It's humid, and we go into attacks, and Marines are going down, black flag conditions, all that kind of stuff. Marines are going down hard. I almost went down. I was legitimately hurting. I fucking hate the heat. I hate the heat more than anything else. I love cold weather. And so we were supposed to do a 20K hike or something like that. Just a really long, miserable hike back to the battalion area after all this training is over. And they ended up calling it off. And so when I went to go talk to my platoon and let them know, I was like, hey gents, I just wanted to let you know the hike has been canceled. They immediately, the whole platoon started cheering and just acting like fools, and I fucking lost it on them. Nobody here at the team has really seen me lose control. I wouldn't even say I lost control. I was fucking pissed because even though I was hurting, I wasn't going to let the fact that I was hurting and I was, about to go down for a heat case myself, I wasn't going to let that get in the way. That training is training. And I told those Marines, I was like, you should be ashamed of yourself right now. When I went to Iraq in 2005, I didn't have the type of training that you guys are getting now. Larry Philippon, could potentially still be alive now if he had that type of training. I was blunt, I was honest, I was direct. And as a leader, you have, that is another form of taking care of Marines. You have to be honest and you have to be direct. when it comes to the awards and the work-life balance, I was like, um, awards matter. Taking care of your Marines matter. Um, Often, you know, the Marine Corps is really bad about writing awards, approving awards, and I think a lot of it can come down to some people. They didn't get an award whenever they left a previous unit or something like that, so they have a grudge now. I'll be the first one to tell you, like, I didn't get, I'm a grunt. We don't give awards out really at all, and if you do get awards, it's at times it's like a popularity contest, um, eh, but I never let that get in the way of, hey sir, we just got done with the deployment. Our squad leaders deserve to be written up. It's nothing to give them a NAM. It's like, we need to take care of them. So that, and it was the same on the team. Me, Captain Scott, Chris, and Raider were the ones writing the awards for the junior Marines. We look at everything that they accomplished, and no matter what, they did a phenomenal job. Like, every single person on that team, like, I consider them to be almost the top 1% of the Marine Corps. They are masters of their craft. So why are we letting them leave with nothing? They are the most passionate individuals I've ever met in my career. Like, the amount of drive, the amount of focus, like, they deserve something, and it's your duty to take care of them in that sense. The part about what do you do when you feel the level of attention you give to taking care of others isn't necessarily reciprocated for yourself. It's frustrating. It really is. You don't bitch down, you bitch up. I wouldn't say I bitched up. I just vented my frustration and my concerns to the parties. Or I'd vent to people like Frank, you, Chris, and that's how it would carry on. You don't let them, don't motherfuck the leadership in front of the junior Marines. Find that trusted person that you can vent to, and let them know what you're going through. You shouldn't ever hold anything in. Holding stuff in is not healthy. Venting is a natural occurrence. You have to trust somebody with the information that's bothering you.
Very well said. So, as you're getting ready to enter the civilian sector, you told me that you're proud of what you accomplished in the Marine Corps, but you also know that there are bigger and better things ahead for you. Why is that mindset so important to you as you transition into the civilian world? And do you think that's an important perspective for any service member, regardless of whether they're at 20 years or one enlistment, to have as they depart the service and start a new life?
So, when I was a young Marine, when I was a corporal, even at times when I was a sergeant, I didn't know what it was to really set goals. What are your goals? What goals do you have? I don't fucking know. It never really occurred to me as I've gained more experiences. I've had the opportunity to develop more Marines. As I've gone through life, I really realized that you have to set realistic expectations for what you want to accomplish. You have to put processes in place in order to accomplish what you want to achieve. And getting out of the Marine Corps, like, there's a number of processes in place that you have to put in place in order to be successful. To me, I want to have a meaningful career after I get out. I want to offer, another company, everything I gave the Marine Corps. I want to still be able to develop people. I still want to be able to lead people. if I don't have that opportunity, I'm going to go crazy. You can't just, you know, those individuals who just get out and just sit around and do nothing, they move on through life without, accomplishing anything ever again. Like, how far do they really make it after they get out? They go stir crazy. They start thinking about what they had. They start, thinking, I should have never gotten out. Find something you're passionate about. Find something you really want to do. I have to do that so I can take care of my family. I can't just go out and do anything. My happiness is my family's happiness.
Yeah, absolutely. And your wife would go crazy if you were just sitting around all day,
fuck yeah.
getting into conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Commenting on the shooting team's face.
Commenting on the shooting team's fight. Yeah.
Hey, young officer, you need to give me a call right now.
If I ever see you hanging out at the PX correcting people, I'll come corral you, Matt.
Yeah, fuck that.
I think that's important. So when I tell the conversation I usually have with Marines who are about to get out is, or just life advice in general, is the person you are, the family man, the individual, your hobbies, that's all that's going to be left at some point. Because at some point the Marine Corps is going to tell you to go. Whether you're a general officer, gunny, lance corporal, like at some point the Marine Corps will exist without us. So it's important that you're comfortable with who you are and that you can stand on your own and that you have other things outside of the Marine Corps. Because you're not going to be in as an 80-year-old. Right?
No.
It's just not going to happen. So I thought that was very well said.
Thank you.
So this next question is the sweet and sour question. Can you go into one instance in your career where being diplomatic achieved the best results and another where being aggressive yielded the best effect? Do you consider balance of both approaches being an important facet of leadership in the Marine Corps?
So, yes, I consider there has to be a balance. If you're overly aggressive, people are just going to stop paying attention to you. But if all you are is diplomatic, you're never going to achieve the results. By being aggressive, it shows what you care about. By being diplomatic shows that you're willing to be a team player. And I'll give you an example where I had to be aggressive, and I could have gotten in a lot of trouble myself for as aggressive as I was. So I had this young Marine, PFC Walker. He had just gotten NJP'd, and came out of the NJP. And I told him, I was like, "Hey, Walker, clock has reset. Clean slate. We're starting back at square one. Do not screw up. I'm gonna treat you like I treat every other Marine. Just do the right thing. That's all I ask." And at the time, he was progressing in the right direction, I'd say. Well, we had a health and comfort inspection at the barracks, and I'm going through the barracks and everything. And I guess our first sergeant at the time had the NCOs, doing health and comfort on the vehicles, like in their trunks and all that. And let's not talk about the legalities of that because that's not legal. You have to get approval for something like that, or there has to be reasonable doubt, I would assume. Yep. You're the cop there, Chris.
Yeah, I don't want to be put on record of legal advice or anything, but sounds suspect. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I have a sergeant coming up to me. It's like, hey, Staff Sergeant Gunlock, First Sergeant wants to see you. I was like, for what? I was like, well, we found a 9mm round in the back of Walker's, in Walker's trunk. I was like, okay, you found a 9mm round in his trunk. Who cares? He's like, well, First Sergeant wants to see you. He said, I was like, he said something about, you writing a 6105 on Walker. I was just like, okay, hey, go back to doing whatever you were doing. I'll go take care of this. So I walked over to First Sergeant's office. And the First Sergeant, looks at me. He's like, what I want you to do, right? I was like, what, write a 6105 on Walker? He's like, exactly. I was like,
well, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not doing it. He's like, I'm going to pretend you just didn't say that. I was like, well, then I'll say it much clearer. I am not writing a 6105 on PFC Walker. He's like, excuse me? I was like, go search my vehicle right now. Go see how many 9mm, 5.56, and shotgun shells are rolling on the floorboard of my fucking truck right now. He's like, well, that's not the point. You got to look at the type of Marine that Walker is. I was like, no, he didn't do anything fucking wrong. I was like, I can go to the PX right now and buy as much fucking ammo as I want and keep it in my vehicle, and I'm not doing a damn thing wrong. I was like, you're just targeting Walker because you don't like him and you're trying to create some paperwork in order to get him kicked out of the Marine Corps. And I'm not going to have any hand to play in that. So, I'm done. I was like, I'm not writing that 6105, and I walked out of the office. Nothing came of it. You know, and that's an instance where, like, that's taking care of your Marines. You know, standing up for them, even if it's somebody above you. You know, being willing to suffer the repercussions, you know, for your Marines. You know, you have to be able to fight those battles. And your Marines will notice. Your Marines will see, and your Marines they will want to be led by you when you set that example for them. Diplomatic. I kind of already covered this. You know, I think I was very diplomatic whenever it came to, you know, creating the USPSA team. You know, I knew I had a vision. I had a goal. I went about, you know, we wanted there to be something we accomplished. And it started out as, hey, after the pistol team, you know, is done with their bullseye season, they're going to go into USPSA. And then, hey, we're going to just start a USPSA team. Hey, you know what? There's going to be no Camp Perry this year. Let's just start a USPSA team. And, you know, it took a lot of work, and I you know, we had to be very careful. We had to be very diplomatic. And diplomatic with the Marines, because there's some Marines, like, you know, younger Marines on the team that were very passionate about bullseye, and you didn't want to just bash it in front of them and talk shit in front of them. Yeah, I'll say it now, and the Marines knew, no, I hate bullseye. I suck at bullseye. I am not good at bullseye. But I was out there with every single day with them, training with them, and I didn't let them know. You know, it was really funny because you know, after I did this, you know, after I helped make the change of, you know, bullseye into USPSA, I called Mark Yackley up, and I told him. He was just like, you did what? He's like, dude, I thought you were a bullseye convert for a while there. And yeah, I played the game. I really did. But I knew I had to do that for the Marines, because when they were competing at Perry, you know, that mattered to them, and I honestly did care about the outcomes, and I cared about their performance, and I cared about, you know, their emotions that go into it, because it is an emotional sport. So you have to be very diplomatic with what you put out there in front of them.
Yeah, very well said. I think another instance in which the both of you were very diplomatic, 2021 Nick McEast. So there was no way that particular Mick went according to how you all planned it. But you all, I could tell you guys were pissed. But you didn't let it affect the quality of the training that we as Marines got, these participants that went to Nick McEast. I was fuming the entire time because I knew what competitions are supposed to look like. I knew damn well that wasn't it. Still had a great time. My Marines still enjoyed it. But I think you guys kept a very good lid on things during that. And then you redeemed all of that during championships. That was a dope championships.
Well, there was a lot of conversations and weather effing and all that going on in the squad bay.
I'm sure.
Around the beers at the end of each day. So that's kind of where it all came out.
And
that was internal to the team.
Memes are also part of coping mechanism.
And quite honestly, like, I'll go into this. Like, I got a call from our sergeant major, you know, and he was like, hey, I heard you guys are having problems out there. what can I do to help? And I just told him, I was like, Sergeant Major, there's nothing you can do to help at this point. I was like, I think we've worked everything out as best as we can. I think if anybody else from up in Quantico calls down to Stone Bay, it's going to make things worse. I was like, let me handle this and let Captain Scott handle this on our level, because if there's any more involvement, it's going to make things worse for the Marines. Like, let's be real. Me and Captain Scott at one point were ready to just call it quits and leave. Like, we almost, like, we were, like, really close to just saying, fuck it, we're out of here. We're not going to be treated like this. But then we were like, we can't do that to the Marines.
And it was also out of spite, too. We didn't want them to have the satisfaction of us leaving.
Yeah.
There was definitely an aspect of that. But it was, at the end of the day, as long as you guys got some training and something out of it. It wasn't ideal or how we wanted it to be.
No.
But at the end of the day, people are still shooting and getting some good training, even if there are a lot of road bumps and we're getting cussed out on the range.
No, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you guys stuck that one out. All right, this next question's quite a shift in subject matter. So, Matt, you and I talk on the phone a lot just about upcoming podcast interviews and whatnot, and we're talking about tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about how you have a representation of Paradise Lost by John Milton in tattoo form. So, I have to give a little bit of background here because I can't imagine a lot of listeners are familiar with Milton's work. Paradise Lost is a novel that was written 16th century, was it?
No, Paradise Lost, didn't that come out in the mid-1800s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, mid-1800s. John Milton writes a book from the perspective of the devil, or Satan, after he is banished from heaven, right? He's a fallen angel, and it's all about him trying to recoup all these fallen angels, whatever have you, to go reclaim what is rightfully theirs. And what's striking about this is it was remarkably progressive for its time. You think about an author writing about something like this in the 1800s, essentially the first anti-hero story, and it's kind of amazing that he wasn't like burned at the stake and like run out of every single house. I see it as the precedence for, like, if you are into shows with really good anti-heroes, I would say Walter White from Breaking Bad and Tony Soprano from The Sopranos, they probably wouldn't exist without Paradise Lost. So I have to ask, what got you into Milton, and why does the work resonate with you enough for you to get a tattoo of it?
All right, so to answer this has a lot to do with how I was raised. You know, I used to be a devout Christian. You know, I did everything from go to church 3 to 4 times a week to Bible camp over the summer.
Wow.
I am now an atheist, and a lot has to do with the experiences I've had overseas, to also educating myself with a more scientific approach. And to this day, I still respect religion, not the institutions of religion, but having the ability to have faith in something. It is quite honestly a beautiful thing in my mind. But I look at religion more as mythology, you know, and I look at the works of Dante Alighieri and John Milton as stories that have impacted modern-day civilization. A lot of the elements of Paradise Lost is taught as if it is truth, from the war in heaven to Satan corrupting humankind, and a lot of it carries over in stories and mythologies, you know, that you see in TV shows today. And I really like how Milton and Alighieri created a fantastical tale that has stood the test of time, especially with the elements that the Bible never covered. You know, now to talk to the tattoo, you know, so when Paradise Lost came out in, I want to say it was like the 1850s maybe, you know, Gustave Doré, he was a famous French artist, and he created all sorts of illustrations. I actually have Dante's Inferno, the 3rd edition, and that was the original one. That's the 3rd edition, was in the mid 1800s, and Gustave Doré did all the illustrations in it. And I also have a 1st edition of the masterpieces of Doré from the 1890s. And the specific illustration I have tattooed on me is when Lucifer went into the Garden of Eden after tricking Uriel, and he's looking up at the heavens, leaned back on the side of a mountain with his wings outspread, and it's just a wave of emotions that you can see in his face. You know, betrayal, hatred, sadness, loss. You know, it's stuff like that that just really speak to me. You know, somebody that was once regarded as, you know, God's, you know, favorite angel, to, you know, he started the war in heaven, was cast out of heaven, you know, and then he comes here to earth, and, you know, he wants to go back in a sense. He wants things to go back the way that they are, but then he's just really twisted and very emotional. And in a way, you can look at Satan as, you know, you look at all the other angels and they don't have freedom of choice. Satan was the first angel that had that freedom of choice, and he
instantly wanted what he used to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, you know, I love mythology, anything from Viking to Greek. You know, I love ancient civilizations.
Mm.
You know, some of the podcasts I listen to, you know, from, what's it called? The Art of Manliness has a lot of ancient Greek and Roman stories that they talk about. And then Dan Carlin's Hardcore History goes really in depth with the battles of ancient Greece and Persia, you know, to the Celtic Revolution. You know, that type of stuff really interests me. But, you know, specifically to Milton, it's just a really, like you said, a contemporary story for its time. The mythology just it speaks to me.
Yeah, my mind was blown when I initially read it. I fear that our listeners may have suddenly done a double take and feel like they fell into a British literature podcast on accident. When we talked about this, you were like, we got to find a way to get this into a podcast. And I was like, Matt, I have no idea how I'm going to do that. But now I found a organic segue. So you've done a lot of reading. You know, you talked about Malcolm Gladwell before. I read a lot of his books. He's a very good author. Milton. How important has reading been to you? And then could you just name some books that have been hugely influential to you as a person?
I will say over the past 4 years, I probably haven't done my due diligence with reading as much as I should. But, you know, I'll say this. You know, I've read a lot of Ben Steger books, you know.
Yeah.
And like, to those books, on the shooting team, like, those are developing your mindset, you know, match mentality. You know, okay, let's talk Lanny Basham, you know, different style of shooting, but it's still developing your mental, you know, your mental preparations. So, you know, you have to exercise the brain. It's really important. Like, throughout my entire career, I always found myself reading books. Like, you know, one book I read, I think it was Combat Leadership or something like that, and it was like, what's his name? He was like one of those Belgium frickin' generals or something like that. I can't. Clausewitz? No, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But it was really fucking boring. But, you know, we'll go to this. Like, there's stuff out there that just really it's mind-numbingly boring, but then reading books that are presented by other leaders really speak to me. You know, biographies, autobiographies. You know, I used to watch Band of Brothers, the TV series, all the time, and I kind of fell in love with Major Dick Winters. And there's a really good book out there called Beyond Band of Brothers, and it was an autobiography written by Major Dick Winters, and I read it, and it just, you know, I looked at a lot of those lessons, you know, and a lot of what he said, and I wanted, like, he inspired me to want to be a better leader. you have to use literature in order to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Just so everyone knows, while Matt was talking, Alex held up a sign that basically said "Theology IQ." So I just wanted to share that with the audience based on that last question. But no, thank you for your answers. It's great. You learn a lot from reading, and it's hugely important.
This can be kind of on the same lines as that, but maybe a little broader. How important has the pursuit of physical and intellectual hobbies been in terms of balance and personal development throughout your career?
All right, I'm going to be the first one to tell you, I don't know what balance is. when I go all in on something, I tend to go overboard. And I'll say this, at one point in my career, I was doing college. I was playing hockey on Friday nights, and I was shooting three gun competitions over the weekend. At the same time, I was a volunteer firefighter. But every single one of those activities has played a huge part in my development, and in the end, I focused on three-gun because, during that time, my wife told me, you have to make a choice. You have to choose, one or two of those things, and what is it going to be? And so, I kept doing the volunteer firefighter thing, and I competed in three-gun because three-gun to me was the most applicable thing to my job at the time. I put hockey back down. I stopped doing school, because I was focused more on developing my platoon, and I just, it was like, I always just made the excuse, I'll just get it done at a later date. But I don't know what balance is, but my wife helped me find that balance.
Yeah, nice. What do you think the future of Marine Corps marksmanship holds? What needs to happen organizationally and culturally for us to get to where we need to go as a service?
All right. I'm going to be blunt. Bullseye needs to go away in order for the CEP to progress. We can't keep holding on to the tradition for the sake of holding on. We can honor those who came before us through trophies, but we need to pursue disciplines that are going to be in line with the mission and Commandant's guidance. Culturally, the Corps already is a gun culture, but it doesn't cut deep enough. I guarantee there are individuals out there who come out to the mix and say they're competitive shooters, and they probably suck because they don't continue that growth. Like, all they know is Marine Corps Marksmanship Competition East, West, PAC, whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, I compete, but that's all they have ever done. They do nothing to grow out of that. They don't take. There's people probably out there that don't go and take that information and give it back out to their Marines when they should be. So, that's one area that where we need to grow. As an organization, the Marine Corps needs to understand the benefits of practical shooting. Pockets of the organization already understand that, but strides need to take place at a higher level. The soft community is a perfect example. Granted, they're a smaller community, but they allow work guns and ammo to be utilized for local matches because they understand the benefit that practical shooting presents. And if you can start with one unit at a time, you have true experts of their craft. It just doesn't, it could be, you can go to a unit, you could have your squad leaders get into competition, you can have your platoon sergeants get into competition, something like that. There needs to be SMEs that understand marksmanship within the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps needs to start letting guns come out of the armory, ammo coming out of the ASP, and competitions to be competed in.
Yeah, that's what all that stuff is there for.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see yourself continuing to contribute to Marine Corps marksmanship and the CEP after your retirement?
Honestly, through this podcast, that's the biggest. That's the biggest thing I can really offer at this point. Guys can, the guys on the team, I'm more than willing to take phone calls from them and give them my thoughts, if they have my thoughts. But I'm not going to be that old man on the fucking phone or on Facebook saying, back in my day, or, I'm not going to give I'm not going to give advice if it's not asked for. Like, I want to see the team grow on its own, I don't need to be the one to tell them, you guys are fucking this up. It's not my job anymore. They need to find their own path.
Well said.
What are some things you've learned from shooting 3-gun that you wish you could impart to the Marine Corps as large?
All right, so there's 5 things. Mental management, mental agility, confidence, teamwork, and true proficiency. Competition really teaches you how to focus, whether it's on one thing or how to build that subconscious act, what was once a conscious action into a subconscious action, and it allows you to do multiple things at the same time. And it allows you to be able to focus on really just developing that skill to greatness. Mental agility, you have to be able to think on the fly. If you screw up, how can I get back on the objective? How can I salvage this situation that I just put myself in? Confidence, there's nothing greater than going to a match and watching your guys just fucking crush it, and then you yourself are crushing it. It builds that confidence in yourself and in the gear that you're using. So if you're using your work guns, you have that confidence that whenever you go to combat, those work guns are going to work. Teamwork. We do everything as a team. When we travel, we eat as a team. We, drink as a team. We compete as a team. We are constantly thinking of ways we can improve the team. This is probably one of the very first places where, like, people take teamwork seriously. And then true proficiency, and I say that, you really become proficient with everything you do, but you also have the understanding that you can always become more proficient. So it's a true understanding of what proficiency is, and you're never satisfied with the level that you're at right now.
What are some ways, those are all the good aspects of 3-gun that can be applicable to every Marine. What are some practical ways that you see that Marines can learn those, or you can impart those on the Marines?
Say that again?
Yeah, it's not on there. I'm throwing you for a curveball, sorry.
Yeah.
What are some, practical ways that you think that Marines can learn some of these aspects of 3-gun?
Without going into competition or just learning it?
I mean, it could be, not every Marine gets to be on the Marine Corps shooting team.
Right.
So how does this trickle down to units?
I'd say first start, I don't know how to answer this, to be quite honest with you.
I think you have answered it.
Yeah, kind of through the CAP.
Yeah, I mean, the CAP, Marine Corps Marksmanship Competitions, Championships, contacting the team. We have a Facebook page.
Yeah.
We have an Instagram page, reaching out to people, and, practice score. Finding the events that are in your local area. You don't have to come to the team.
Chris surprised you with that one. But
Yeah,
I think you answered it quite succinctly in our episode where we talked about how to get better. And you just said instill a culture of competition within your own unit.
Okay, yeah.
Add part times, add a shot timer, get guys working against each other, and I think some of that will naturally come through.
I'm going to blame it on that I only had 2 hours of sleep last night, and I ended up spending all night watching Band of Brothers.
A lot has happened today.
Yeah.
You've shaken a lot of hands, heard a lot of speeches.
Taken a lot of photos.
Spent a lot of photos, spent a lot of time with family, and then now you're here with us degenerates recording this podcast.
Four
Yeah.
alphas in 90-degree weather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been quite a day for you, Matt. But as we wrap up, I mentioned it before. Hard to sum up 20 years, but some of the sacrifices you've made, time away from your family, all around the globe, the time and energy and passion that you've given to your Marines and your commands, hard to really quantify at this point. Some of the improvements that you've made overall to Marine lethality, to the SEA, to marksmanship in general. I know there's Marines that served with you back when you were a junior Marine to now, in your capacity as the staff and COIC of the team, that will remember you forever. So all that is to say, thank you for all you've done. Like, really hard to encapsulate everything that you've influenced over 20 years, but trying the best I can. And I got to thank you personally. In here we mentioned like relationships. I would not have met half the people that we've interviewed if it weren't for you. And a lot of the friendships that you've forged in 3-gun tactical games, USPSA, and just the community in general really shine through in some of these interviews. I'm meeting these people for the first time, but they treat me like a family just because they know you. So this has really been life-changing for me. Really thank you for the opportunity, and I'm glad we became friends, and I'm glad we're doing this together. At this point, is there anything else that you would like to leave the listeners with?
Just find what matters to you the most and pursue that. Whether it's being with family, be true to your family. Whether it's being a competitive shooter, put your heart and soul into it. And whether it's, building friendships, build the best friends. Be a real person, be a real leader. Don't try and fake it because people can see through it. You really complimented me a lot. I don't deserve it. I think in some cases I feel, today at the ceremony, a lot of people came and I felt really selfish for having so many people there just for me, and I'm honored that they're there, but it's been a wild ride. I'm really excited to experience the next side of life. And, I just, I'm ready for it to be over.
Yeah, you sure are. If you're listening to this, please reach out to Matt. Congratulate him on a successful career, 20 years, now that he's transitioning to the civilian sector. And we hope you enjoyed this conversation. It's something we've been working on for a long time. We really want to sit down and pick Matt's brain about some of the highlights and lessons from his career. So let us know how we're doing and leave us some feedback, and hope you enjoyed this.